All right, welcome everybody. It's Doug here with the LincolnList.com, and this is the week review for the 16th of March. I hope all is well with you and you are enjoying your weekend. As always, if you need some help with your trading, you're struggling, you can't seem to get to the level of the kind of trader that you want to be, visit the LincolnList.com and take a 14-day free trial. We'll start out here talking a little bit about the SPY and what we might be able to see over the coming week here and look at a few technical levels. A nice little few days of sell-off, pulling off the highs nicely. And when you look a little closer here at the daily chart, we've just kind of run into this lower 204 number. Not a whole lot of significance there. You got a little bit of a bounce back in there at the beginning of February. So for now, we're going to use that number as support because that's where we saw a nice little pivot on Wednesday. Got back down close to that number. If you look at the upper chart here, the 5-minute intraday chart, bounced off of there twice on Friday. So for now, that number is pretty important to us carrying it over. If we continue to hold that number, you see some good support, or you see a nice little defense of that, then maybe this will wash out roughly here around this 50 moving average on the daily chart, this red line. Maybe it'll just kind of wash out right there, and we might start to see this thing grind up, as it has done a lot in the past. On the other hand, if we really start to lose that number and there isn't much interest defending it, then I would think we would at some point, maybe it takes a week, 2 weeks, who knows, but we'd start to work our way slowly down into this lower area of the 197s, 198s, so roughly, let's just say roughly around 200. This was a lot more significant support carrying over from the earlier parts of December. We got down there really, really close in early January and, of course, February. So that's a little bit more significant number. So if we don't hold this near-term support, kind of look for this thing to either drift down there. Who knows? Maybe it just slams right down there. It could go either way. But I would think if we don't hold that lower 204 area, that's what you might see here with the SPY. Now, as we move forward and we start looking at stocks, just because the markets pull back has absolutely no reason to think there's not bull markets everywhere, because there is. Right now, the pharma space has been hot since the beginning of the year, and it continues to be that way right now. I'm going to start looking at ANAC, and I kind of thought maybe at the beginning of the week with some of the stuff that we had seen here with the big hit that you saw, with ACAD, that you might see some of the pharma names pull a little bit, or maybe it kind of robbed the Momo. Now, there's still plenty of them. One is certainly is this ANAC here. This was a really good looking chart, nice grind up, and then of course you get this explosion on Friday. I think at this point, unless you're already long, I'm not saying that it can't go up again, don't get me wrong, but unless you're already long, it's not probably the best spot. Now, we have certainly seen these things go back to back on some parabolic days, but if we do sort of come out strong early on Monday, you start to take out some of these upper areas here of 56.94, and we do get some good parabolic, then I would be interested in probably shorting. This was a pretty big move. As I said, it'd be kind of tough for it to follow up, but it isn't like we haven't seen that here with a couple of other stocks, so don't rule that out. If it doesn't kind of washes out or something like that, or it doesn't really, maybe it's just a small wash or comes into some of these supports, I definitely would not short this into any reds, because if you look at the chart, the shorts come from the parabolics. You've got to be off of multiple greens and multiple paras. That's the only way you get the pullbacks. Otherwise, what these charts have been doing is just building bases and grinding out. And if you chase it a little bit into the red, it's probably not going to work out for you. You're going to get smoked on that trade. So ANAC, kind of like this one here, is a short. Haven't ruled out a second day, but I want to look at a few different spots. Now, if it does kind of wash out, maybe an early morning panic or a quick shakeout, could be a nice buying opportunity in there. I'd look at some of these lower levels here of like 55 for support, and then maybe down in here to 53. So if the first couple of moves in the morning are red and you're not already short, then you might want to look at some washout buys. Anything above that, I don't think I would chase it. I would let the chart kind of set up a little bit. Same goes here for this AMPE, AMPE. One of the little cheapy stocks is going to gather a lot, kind of like a gene. I wouldn't maybe classify this as a gene, but you got a nice little cheap stock here that's moved up $2. This is a good looking parabolic. I don't think the daily RSI, let's kind of take a look at this and see where we might, it's 83, so it's pretty overbought here at this point. You do have a nice little number to work off of, which is this 858 highs on Friday. Nice little pull here late into the session, which is common for these things. You're going late into a Friday. People are going to want to take some profits. But with this one as well, I think what you really want to look for is either well-defined areas of pivot like this. If shorting is your interest on this one, then you want to look for nice little pivots here where you can control the risk, or you need parabolics. Like if you really take a look at this move, and it's important that when these things are on the front side or in the accumulation phase, that if you're going to short, you need that parabolic, because if you really look at this chart, it didn't give you that parabolic. Yes, it was grinding up nicely and the price was skipping good, but you didn't really get that nice blow off parabolic, not till really late here in the day when you started to separate yourself from the 10 and 20 moving averages. Did you see that nice little pullback? Having said that, it's probably, well, maybe first trade in the morning it would be a little bit too low. You got a nice little support spot right here. So if this thing holds and maybe bounces up here, we could look for a short, especially if it gets rejected. For example, comes up into this 855 and pivots off of that. I think that would be a pretty good short. If this thing happens to gap up again and you're looking at 9 first thing in the morning, definitely 100% of my focus would be looking at shorting this thing. As always with these, if they do wash out, first couple of moves get you down into here, maybe if it's a really, really thick red, could be a nice buying opportunity, but I think there might be some other ones that I'd be interested in other than this AMPE. But let's keep an eye on it. Nice few day breakout. This was a really good looking breakout here on the daily chart, coming from a nice ascending wedge. So oftentimes that's what happens. You get a really, really good breakout, then the euphoria kind of floods into it. Of course, the sector that it in also helps, and maybe you might see a shift here real soon with these pharmaceutical companies. But AMPE, definitely looking at possibly shorting this one. Same would go with EGRX. We're just kind of running down the pharmaceutical line, looking at one after the other. This was a big move, and this is what we might see. What you saw here on Friday with this one is what you might run into with AMPE coming into Monday, is where you've got the breakout. The chart looks really, really good. This was a nice high and tight flag, but then again, another ascending wedge. And you get the breakout, and then it just gets a little too much. And if you're not already in that, it doesn't pay to chase that move. Maybe you pull it off a couple of times, but in the long run, you're going to get smoked doing that. So you look for some nice parabolics like this one right out of the gate early. Gave us a really, really nice short. Now, I want to see what happens with this. There's still a lot of room for a nice little retracement. This thing would still be bullish if it retraced $3 or $4. So there's some good looking room in here. Again, the theme throughout this watch list is these farmers continue to surprise. They continue to just barbecue some of the early shorts. So you've got to pick your levels nicely. You got to look where you can manage your risk. It's either got to be shorts off of parabolics or when you get some nice pivots. And if it doesn't want to go down, the worst thing you can do is fight it right now, because these things have a lot more momentum than people are giving them credit for. So don't rule out a move to 50, but I do think if we can start looking at some of these levels underneath of this 44.62, you could get a nice little pull. Of course, you don't want to short it down in here if it's just hitting this number. That's support. You don't want to be there. You want to look for some pivots, maybe ride it down into that level, and of course, if you can get a wash underneath of that, that would be nice on this EGRX. And of course, GWPH will just stay in the same little space. Nice little break here. I don't know really what I want to do with this one. Of course, you look at something that moves $11 in a day that you might want to short it. But as I have said, what really reminds me of this one, if we go look back just a little bit further here, you got some nice resistance up here at 110. So this could start a nice little move up to that level. A very good example is this legend. Looks almost like this, where you got that first real big parabolic, and then it spent the next few days just kind of walking its way on up into some of that area up here in the 79s, 80 spots. So kind of looks like this legend might hit 80. So you might see, as all these, I think I'm looking, I am looking at shorting every single one of these ones that I put up here. But it's just not a short just because it's up a lot. I guess that's what I'm trying to say, because we've seen the pharma space really surprise people. It's really been the theme of this year. It's been the bullish sector. Yes, at some point that will stop, but until you see that shift starting to come out of these names, then you've got to continue to give them the respect that they deserve. You might see moves. So when I'm talking about shorting them, for me, I need pretty much one thing. I either need new highs and really speed up parabolic moves to short off of, and use those for trades until maybe one of these days they go from green to red. Or if they do wash out, or you catch a couple of deep reds maybe on some profit taking, they might run into some nice little levels of support and make for some good bounce trades. As always, you got to be careful on one hand that they might rip, and you also have to think that maybe you're chasing some of these stocks here. You don't want to do that either. So who knows? We'll keep our eyes on these farmers. Think they're going to really play out nicely this week as they have for the last couple of weeks. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, if you're struggling there, you really want to look at how to play these things, really understanding the parabolics, understanding where to get in, how to manage your risk, and how to control these levels. Feel free to visit thelincolnlist.com and take the 14-day free trial. Other than that, as always, thanks for listening to me ramble, and have yourselves a great week of trading. Talk to you soon.